Everyone around me was making money, and I was doing nothing. Not because I missed it, I saw it. Every day, I just did not move. And for a long time, I was not sure whether that made me disciplined or just scared. I'm Sats. And this is what months of watching everyone else win actually does to you. Not to your wallet, to the way you think about yourself. It started with a friend's message, a screenshot of a portfolio, a number I recognized from 6 months ago that had somehow tripled. He was not showing off, he was just sharing. But I stared at that number for longer than felt comfortable. Then a colleague, a different coin, 400% in 3 weeks. He mentioned it the way you mention a good restaurant, casually, like the opportunity had been obvious and I had simply not noticed. Then it was everywhere. Group chats full of charts going up, social media feeds full of people talking about life-changing money. And I was sitting there with Bitcoin, which had moved, but nothing like that. Nothing that looked like what everyone else seemed to have found. The voice started quietly, then it got louder. Why am I holding this when everything else is doing more? What is the point of having a strategy if it costs you this much? Am I being disciplined, or am I just afraid to move? I did not have clean answers, and that was the problem. When you cannot clearly explain why you are doing nothing starts to feel like a choice you are not really making. It starts to feel like inertia dressed up as conviction. The hardest moment came one evening. I was looking at a chart, not Bitcoin, something else. Something that had gone up 600% in 2 months. I did the maths on what I had put into Bitcoin. I did it twice. For about 20 minutes, I was genuinely on the edge. I did not move. Not because I was certain, because I stopped and asked myself one question. Do I actually understand what this thing is? The honest answer was no. I understood the number. I did not understand what was underneath it. I did not know whether the reasons it had gone up were real or just enthusiasm. I did not know if I was looking at something with genuine value or just something that had not fallen yet. And I realized that if I could not answer that question, I had no way of knowing when to leave. I would just be hoping. And hoping is not a strategy. It is just a version of panic that feels better in the moment. If this is the kind of honest Bitcoin conversation you were looking for, the subscribe button is right there. The thing I have come to believe about that period is this. The people around me were not making better decisions. They were taking more risk at a time when more risk was being rewarded. From the outside, that looks like skill. It usually is not. It is timing. And timing you cannot control is not an edge you can rely on. Some of them kept their gains, more did not. The ones who kept them understood what they owned well enough to know when to get out. The ones who did not held through the reversal and gave it back. The altcoin season ended. The charts came down. Most of the conversations about life-changing money went quiet. And Bitcoin, which had looked slow and boring and like the wrong choice for months, was still there. I do not tell this to feel vindicated. I was uncomfortable for a long time. The pressure was real. The self-doubt was real. The sense that I was missing something that everyone else could see was real. But what I kept coming back to was the same question. Do I understand what I own? With Bitcoin, the answer was yes. Not perfectly, but enough. Enough to sit with a drop. Enough to not need the narrative to change every week to stay convinced. Enough to hold without constantly checking whether the story still made sense. Doing nothing felt like failure for months, and maybe it was. But it was the only decision I could make honestly, and that had to be enough. So, here is what to take away from this. Watching people around you make money on things you are not holding is genuinely difficult. The pressure, the self-doubt, the voice asking if you are doing this wrong, all of it is real. The gains were real too for a while. What most people did not have was the understanding to know when to leave. That is what made those gains temporary for most of them. The question is not whether other things are going up. It is whether you understand what you own well enough to hold it through the moments when it does not. That question is harder to answer than it sounds, but it is the only one that matters. If you are still working out whether you understand Bitcoin well enough to hold it through the hard moments, the video on why Bitcoin has value is the place to start. Not to convince you, to give you the foundation that makes every difficult period easier to sit with. Watch that next. Stack smart, stay curious. See you in the next stack.